My name is Jordana and I've been a public speaker in 4 continents, 35 different cities, and I've turned it into my full-time career. But it all started on July 20, 2011. I went on a date that went horribly wrong. So this gorgeous guy and I are messaging back and forth, and he was witty, he was smart, he was good looking, all of the things that would want me to dedicate an entire brunch to a single person. So I rock up at the cafe and I can't spot him anywhere, even though I received a message saying that he'd already arrived. And someone starts waving at me, and this is now the classic disaster where he looked nothing like his picture. It was clearly taken like 10 or 15 years ago, so I barely recognized him. We sat down, he comes hungover, so he's slurring his words, and we didn't end up just not getting along with each other or enjoying each other's company, but we ended up fighting. It was so bad. So I was in my mid-20s and all of my friends at the time were in serious relationships and starting to get married or engaged. So I walked home so sad. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be a lonely cat lady for the rest of my life. Like, what am I going to do? And when I got home, I called one of my friends, but because I couldn't really talk because I was so shocked by the experience that I just had and the thought of a future totally alone. So all I could do was imitate the way this guy was slurring his words. And by the end of the conversation, I felt better. And she was laughing really hard. So then I called another friend and I added in exaggeration and enthusiasm. And she was laughing so hard that I started laughing so hard too. And by the end, we were both crying tears of laughter. And that laughter changed everything for me. It turned the whole situation around, making me forget just how shocked and upset I'd felt a few hours earlier. And it was such a powerful revelation because in that moment, I realized 2 very important things. Number 1, comedy is so much faster and cheaper than therapy, true fact for me. And number 2, I need to do this because it's therapeutic. It was the quickest, fastest way to heal, and I fell madly in love. So I made it my mission to become a comedian. I started to read books and listen to audiobooks, and I joined a local comedy group. I started doing open mic nights. I did multiple comedy courses and workshops. And after that date, something huge shifted. I started writing jokes about everything that annoyed me. Every single frustration, inconvenience, and awkward encounter turned into a punchline. And guess what? Comedy really did become my therapy. The more life annoyed me, the more jokes I wrote. And soon I had way more material than I had stage time. 2 months later, I did my first 5-minute stand-up spot at a club in Melbourne. And around 18 months later, I went from doing 7 minutes max on stage to a full 55-minute show in the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. What I love most about comedy is it allows us to take our shadow side, the things that we don't want people to know, and shine a light on them, which gives us immense power. Comedy is empowerment. When we can learn to turn the darkest parts of ourselves, the parts that we cringe at, into our superpowers and reframe our vulnerabilities, there is nothing that will stop us. You see, once I realized that every bad moment could be flipped into comedy gold, my whole world changed. Bad date? Boom, new material. Huge argument where I overreacted? Brilliant content. And anytime I ever find myself thinking, oh, this is such a waste of time, or, uh-oh, this is going pear-shaped really quickly, part of me goes ding, 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 brilliant for comedy. So no matter how bad a situation is, I know it can always become an amazing joke. And knowing that, having that mental cushion to fall back on turns some of even the worst days into some of the funniest. And now I can't imagine a life without humor. I can't imagine a day without humor. Seeing the world through a comedian's filter has changed the way I view everything for the better. I actually teach some really easy and practical humor principles in my one-to-one client work because we can all use them, whether we're presenting on stage, on camera, or at work. So to learn more about my one-to-one work, click the link in the description below. So within 18 months, I performed, wrote, and produced my first 55-minute show in the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which is one of the biggest comedy festivals in the world. Now, I was a social media comedian, so my niche was social media, and this was long time before Instagram even came out. It was when everyone used Facebook and Twitter. And so this was my first show, Social Media, the Epidemic. This was all about my addiction to social media and technology, the enforced detox that I took for 3 days, and the lessons that I learned through that process. And this was my second show. It was called Like Me, Love Me, Retweet Me, which was all about the vanity aspect of what we put out and portray on social media versus what's really going on behind the scenes. Clearly, years later, these are still major issues that we're grappling with today. You know, during comedy, especially through that first festival, I had the highest highs and the lowest lows. In the highest highs, you can have amazing energy that is brilliant and you've got amazing crowd work and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm loving life. And then you can have a show where one mobile phone goes off or one interaction with the crowd just changes everything. And I remember through my first festival, I had this show and I was just like, I don't think I can keep going. I literally cannot keep going. So I called one of my comedian friends in New York and she gave me the best pep talk ever and reminded me that the highs are there and the lows are there and it's all part of the journey. And I'm so happy we had that conversation because I knew I didn't want to stop, but in the moment we can just allow our fears and our anxieties and our worries to get to us. Lucky I didn't stop because I actually sold out all the shows that I had for that season and then I ended up adding extra ones and it was just such an incredible festival experience to have. And then soon after that experience, I got a magic phone call. You see, I'd always dreamed of becoming a speaker. So I get this call one day from an agent. Hi, we're looking for a corporate comedian for a conference for 20 minutes and the theme is social media. I hear that's you. So I was like, oh, this is my doorway into the corporate world. I felt both terrified and exhilarated. And I said yes, even though it totally scared me. And it ended up being so much fun. And it showed me a really important lesson between corporate audiences and club audiences. Club audiences love to throw things at you. Corporate audiences are number one, sober, and number two, really polite. Yay! You know, comedy actually set me up with incredible skills to transfer into the world of corporate speaking because I learned how to read the room, how to tune into the audience's energy and actually learn how to adapt and give them what they want, how to stay calm under pressure when things aren't going the way that you think or expect. Improv and quick thinking is a massive part of crowd work. I also use that a lot when I'm doing keynote presentations. I learned about resilience and having a thick skin and how to handle rejection and criticism and let it wash over me and not actually take it seriously. Comedy also taught me how to sharpen my communication skills masterfully because every single word in comedy is intentional. It has to be tight, it has to have the right impact. So this helped me become far more definitive with my messaging in corporate. I also learned how to adapt and change direction immediately if required. Storytelling skills, delivery, timing, pacing, pausing for impact. Pausing is so important in comedy. We actually call it a beat. You need to have a beat in there because if you just keep going, you roll over the possible laughs that your audience can have. Plus, I got really good at impromptu moments, crowd banter, engagement skills, observing what's going on. How do I find the tiny things that are the behaviors, the quirks, all of the little details that a comedian would pick up on are super important for the corporate world. I even had a corporate heckler once. It was so fun. Which I think most people would be frightened of, but I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. You give it to me and I dish it right back. It was so much fun. Everyone loved the experience. Plus, all mistakes, all tech errors, all awkward moments now become incredible moments to create jokes and to have these awesome experiences in the moment with the audience. And the power of laughter in the corporate world is huge. The benefits are so immense and they spread far beyond the conference itself. They spread into the workplace. They spread into the culture. We all need to laugh and we all love to laugh. We're just not given the permission to laugh all the time. So to bring that laughter, that joy, that magic and that spontaneity into corporate events is so fun. Plus, stand-up is literally as tough as it can get. So there is no disaster or situation that can frighten me at a corporate event. My ethos and my philosophy is that every single mistake we make on stage is like a masterclass in public speaking. This is one of the points that I love to explore and really explain to my one-to-one clients because when we understand that mindset shift, we turn that fear into a moment of excitement and we are able to actually absorb the lessons that we're experiencing much faster. If you do want to learn more about my one-to-one client work, click the link in the description below. So as my corporate comedy bookings developed, one booking led to another, this eventually, and very excitedly, turned into keynote presentations. And humor was my major point of difference because if we're learning while we're laughing, we retain the information much better. We're far more engaged, which means the messages land in a much more deep and meaningful way. Plus, a lot of corporate events can be really, really dry. And we need to laugh. It breaks down barriers, it enhances creativity, it builds connections. It means our communication is much more dynamic and it makes us more open to receiving really good messages. Whereas if we're closed off and we're too afraid to laugh because we're afraid of the people around us, nothing can actually get in. So comedy is a really powerful way to bring lessons to life in a corporate setting. Plus, humor opens our hearts and our minds. So I went from comedy to keynote speaking, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. Here's a picture of me at the New York Comedy Club. This was the first time I ever did stand-up in New York. Look how cool, calm and collected I am, right? Wrong. I was so scared. I was so nervous. I was sweating. I was rote learning all of my jokes at that time, which I do not recommend at all. It is the worst thing to do. And so I memorized everything and I get out on stage and I had written bullet points on my hand in case I forgot stuff, and I say my first joke and then I can't remember anything. I have a complete emotional block. My physiology just totally takes over and I can't remember any joke I'd ever written, any joke for that set. I couldn't even remember my name. So I look down at my hand and it's this giant smudge mark because I'd been sweating so hard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I've got 4 minutes left. Whew, lights in my eyes. So I looked towards a table where one of my best friends was sitting and I locked eyes with her and I just took a breath. And in that moment of finding a little bit of peace, eventually my jokes flooded back and I was able to actually finish the set. This was the first time I did a proper keynote presentation and I did not sleep for 1 second the night before. I remember going, I need to sleep, why can't I sleep? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's 10 o'clock, it's 11 o'clock, it's 12 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock, I have to sleep, I need to sleep. Toss, turn, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., I may as well get up and have a coffee and get ready. Woo! This photo was from a special experience that was put on during the comedy festival where comedians got up and did these little 6 or 7 minute sets each. It was run by the radio station that I worked at. And at this point, I was doing a 55-minute full show. I get up, I say my first joke, and then I have a complete emotional block. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. It was like I was having an internal dialogue with myself. And it all happened because I looked down in the front row. I see the head of the entire radio station, and that's when I got my block. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I've got 6 minutes left. So I jumped out into the audience and I started to ask them questions, and then that space eventually meant that my jokes flooded back. This is a picture from the first time I was on TV. I had makeup on all over my face. I was so red, so bright, and I literally cannot remember an entire thing. I flew from Melbourne to Sydney for this interview and I can't remember anything. Can't remember the flight, can't remember the venue, don't remember the taxi ride, and don't remember anything that I said except for watching the footage back. And this was, I think, the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire career. I went on a quest from Melbourne to Silicon Valley to try to find Mark Zuckerberg to tell him my favorite 5 minutes of Facebook jokes. So I went from Melbourne to Dallas to New York and then to Silicon Valley. And this is me standing outside Facebook's headquarters, literally dressed as a giant thumb, because I was like, oh, what's a really cool idea that will stand out and pop? I know, why don't I create a giant thumb made out of neoprene? So this moment on their campus, before I put my costume on, was literally the scariest thing I've ever experienced. It was like there was an impenetrable wall of fear and I was being surrounded by their security cars because they probably had no idea what I was actually doing there, rightly so. And I'd promoted it for at least 2 weeks beforehand. So like to try to actually get that costume on, to get through that was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. But I did it clearly because here I am standing outside the famous sign. So I've been there, I've done it, and I've felt fear in 1,000 different ways. It's shown up when I expected it, it's shown up when I didn't expect it. So I understand if you feel fear, it's totally normal. And if you want to move past it, you absolutely can. And in my one-to-one client program, we find out exactly how your fear shows up, when it kicks in, what it looks like for you. And then I give you the exact tools that I learned and I still use today to manage your fear when it's down here so that it doesn't overwhelm you. Because what happens is if our fear takes over our physiology, that's when we have a disconnect between our brain and our body. So to learn more about my one-to-one program, click the link in the description below. So comedian to speaker, then a client who booked me for a keynote also said, hey, would you be able to MC? I'd never done it before, but I said yes, even when I did not feel ready. And it was so fun because MCing involves thinking on your feet, quick wit, lots of really fun banter and immense concentration. So I became a unicorn, a comedian, a keynote speaker and an MC. This is a very unique skill set. And I saw a huge gap in the market. I was like, why aren't professional speakers who are at events every day training people to speak? Why are we learning about public speaking from books or from trainers that aren't out there having the real world stage experiences, the on the ground experiences? And second to that, why is all training so dry and boring? So my point of difference is turning fear into fun and using comedy and laughter to do this. Fear is a very scary topic, obviously. So is public speaking, and when those two combine, it can just lock us. So I believe that learning, especially public speaking and presentation and communication skills, has to be fun if we want true transformation to take place. It must be fun, it must be high energy, because we want to replace old experiences that don't serve us with these new and fun and dynamic experiences, because we can get trapped in our fear. Like completely locked. Like for example, one of the sources of fear can be a past experience that we might not consciously be thinking of, but we hold it and we store it subconsciously or energetically, and we allow that to inform future experiences. So we might have done show and tell in grade 2 and it didn't go well. And so we have this experience and we're like, oh my God, I can never be in front of people again. So it's not front of mind, but we allow that past experience to project into the future so that we think worst case scenario. So fun and laughter helps us break through these patterns that might be unconscious to us, but we hold on to and they block us and they don't serve where we want to go, the amount of money that we want to make, the career we want to have, and the future that we actually want to create. So I combine my background in journalism, which I did before comedy, and my experiences from stand-up comedy, keynote speaking, emceeing, and workshops. And by the way, I'm also a magician and mentalist. I bring that in too, to create a totally one-of-a-kind training and coaching. I bring in the lessons from falling, making mistakes, picking myself back up, falling, making mistakes, picking myself back up, falling, making more mistakes and picking myself back up again. My program is bursting with energy and humor and real-world insights to help you fast-track your journey and connect with your confidence quickly so that I can save you all of the pain that I went through. And it's training that you won't find in any textbook because I created it all myself from my many experiences. My greatest passion is teaching public speaking and communication skills to others. I love to help people turn their fear into fun, to uncover their confidence, to find their voice, to step into their power. It is one of the most beautiful transformations to be part of and experiences to see. We all have amazing messages to share, so don't let your fear stop you, because it can get really loud and it can get really chaotic if we listen to it. So thanks to that one bad date, my whole life changed. My whole world changed. It led me down this path where humor isn't just a career. It is a way of being, it's a lifestyle, and it's a lifeline. Learning to see life through a comedic lens has changed every single part of who I am. It has healed, inspired, and empowered me, and I love teaching others how to find the strength in their journey and laugh while they're doing it because it makes it so much more exciting. So if you want to make public speaking super fun for you instead of super scary, click the link in the description below to learn more about my one-to-one client work. See ya!